Okay, I'm just going to show you a really quick way of how to draw a rib, and for those of you who don't know what rib is, basically the rib is the trim that you get on the cuffs or on your neck or on your waistband or on your jogging bottoms for that matter, and basically it's knitted on a setting so that when it stretches it retains back to its original shape. And so we're going to stimulate that, or illustrate that with using our pen tool and creating a brush. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I have a stroke colour. So I'm going to swap these around because at the moment the stroke has not got a colour, but the fill has. So if I swap them around clicking on that double arrow, you'll see it flips them round. So there's no fill and there's definitely a stroke. So I'm going to make sure that the stroke is definitely a black, like it needs to be a proper black. I always find it much nicer when when doing technical drawings to use a proper black. So I'm going to double click and I'm going to make sure that basically the colour picker is dead in the corner of the colour box there, and no matter what colour I go to, as long as I make sure it's in the corner, it's going to be a true black. So I'm going to select OK to accept that colour. I'm going to now get my pen tool and I'm going to just draw a straight line. And so I've got just a basic straight line, it doesn't matter how long it is, and I need to actually I'm going to apply the rib pattern actually to this stroke. So what I'm going to do is go to Windows, I'm going to bring up my brushes, and straight away the brushes dialog box pops up. I'm also going to bring up my strokes. So I'm going to go to Windows and I'm going to go to Strokes. And so now I've got my strokes and I've got my brushes, I'm ready to go. So I'm going to change my stroke weight. Now the stroke weight basically is the thickness of the line. So at the moment it's at 1, which we normally would use when we're drawing the internal parts of our garment. And I'm going to go to the drop down box to increase this. So the higher the number, the thicker the line will be. So if I take it all the way to 100 pt, which is the measurement or the unit measurement for the thickness of the line, and so now you can see it's really thick. What we need to do though is we need to kind of get the kind of rib effect almost with the stripes going through it. So if I click on my dashed lines, straight away you can see that I've got some like a rib pattern going through, and as you look at them you can see that the numbers in the dash and the gap are sort of irregular, and this is great if you want to do a 2x2 rib or you know, a 4x1 or whether you want to do a setting that is irregular. It's always best to make sure you have a number in the dash, in the gap, and then the dash and the gap again. I'll just show you. So I'm just going to add in another number, and I'm going to add in a 6. And can you see it's starting to become like an irregular pattern, which kind of gives the effect of it being, as I said, an irregular rib setting. So if I go back now to what it was originally, you can see that when it's a similar number in the dash and the gap, and we haven't got any numbers in the rest of the boxes, it's just a regular setting. And normally you'd find that as a 1x1 or a 2x2, 3x3, so where the numbers are actually matching. Okay, so I've got my rib, I'm using a 3x3. What's also interesting to note that the 100 points actually defines how wide or the depth of the rib itself. And the reason why I'm taking it to 100 is so that it allows me the freedom to play around with any sort of depth that I'm using for my garments. Now if I take that down to 0.5, 0.75, you can see it becomes very narrow, almost like stitching. And so it doesn't really help with the lower number when you have to fill a big panel, i.e. So I've left it at 100 at the moment. Now at the moment this is great, we've got a rib, we can use this, but what can we do with it really? So we've just got it here. But the great thing about it is that we can make it into a brush. And what a brush is, it works in the same way as a symbol, and it basically is an effect we apply to a stroke or a path. And so basically what that means is if I draw a path at any point and I want to change the effect or apply an effect or a technique or a texture to it, I can do that by my brushes. But I need to get it into the brush library first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my black arrow tool, make sure that this is still selected. I'm going to hover over the shape and I'm going to click and drag and put it into my brush library. Now straight away the brush dialog box comes up. It's a new brush, and so we need to change it from scatter brush to pattern brush. So I'm going to select pattern brush and then I'm going to click OK. Now we'll get this brush option box, and what I really recommend here is that you definitely name it, because sometimes when you've got a lot of brushes in your library it can become quite confusing. So it's better to keep it as to give it its own name. So we can see kind of what the rib is going to look like. It gives a sort of illustration here, or a preview. What we need to make sure that we change though, most importantly, is change the colorization and the method. And by keeping it none, what that means is that whatever color you have set your brush up in originally, so in this case it's black, it will stay black. So if our garment is red, for instance, and we need the rib to be red, we won't be able to do that. So we need to change the method to tints and shades. And therefore that when we draw any line and we click on the colour, we will definitely be able to change our rib. So we're going to leave our fit to stretch to fit, and all we're going to do is select OK. Now these options, as I click on them, you'll see that there's a difference. There's a difference between them both. You can select stretch to fit or approximate path. I'm going to change my mind actually and put approximate path, and then I'm going to select OK. Now what happens next is, if I draw a line of any sort, you will see that the rib actually takes the shape of the line. And if I was to draw a shape, for instance, let me just move this up a bit. If I was to get my ellipse tool and draw a circle, you will see that it also applies that brush to that stroke, okay? And if I made the stroke smaller, you'll see again that it changes the effect of that brush. Okay, perfect. So what do we do now we've got this brush in here? We can go away, and we can not go away, we can actually save this brush as a library, so that when we open any other document, if we want to draw a rib on our skirt or on our polo shirt, for instance, we can just open the brush library. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the brush dialog box, we're going to go to the drop down menu, and we're going to select Save Brush Library. And again, we're going to save it in our destination. I like to save mine on the desktop for this purpose, and I'm just going to call it Brush Library. And so the idea is, over a period of time, you keep adding to this brush library, and it's quite handy to have if you go to a new job, for instance, or you've got a new project that you want to do. Instead of drawing the rib again, you have you don't have to do it. You can just open this brush library, and if you want to open it, you go to you open the new document. So let me go to a new document. Control N. Now if I want to open that brush library, can you see that my rib is not in this new document? So I need to open it up. So if I go to the drop down box in the brushes, again, just as it is, and I can say open brush library, I'm going to go to others, I'm going to go straight to my desktop to find my brush library, going to click on it. I'm not going to drag it into Illustrator, I must only open it, and straight away when I open it, can you see my rib library, my rib in my brush library is now present. Just going back to this though, I wanted to just show you one last thing, what you can do in terms of applying your rib to a shape, this being a neck rib. So I'm going to draw a V-neck rib, for instance. So let me get rid of this for a second. Undo pen, I'm going to get rid of this. Okay. Okay, so I've got my pen tool back, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you how you can use that rib into different shapes. Now I'm just doing a V-neck shape. So So you should be able to see this quite easily. Just make this a little bit more angled. Okay, and I'm going to select this. I'm going to reflect it because I want to have two sides, and I'm going to finish it off with the back part of my rib. Making sure that back neck is a nice shape. Okay, so I'm going to fill those shapes so they have a fill. I'm going to send that to the back. Okay, and I'm just going to tighten this up a little bit. Okay, let's go a bit closer so you can see. So now we've got our template for our V-neck. Make sure that this is nicer, matching it up. Okay, so now we have our V-neck. We need to get our rib into this V-neck shape. So what we're going to do is I'm going to copy this shape. So I'm going to do, just zoom out a bit, Command C, and I'm going to paste it anywhere on the page. Okay, and then what I'm going to do now with this shape is I'm going to insert this rib into this shape. So I'm going to get my pen tool. I'm going to draw a straight line through the center of my panel. So this is going to be my new panel. And I'm going to then apply my brush to it. So I've selected my black arrow tool, I've selected the line, I'm going to click on my brushes, and straight away you can see that my rib has appeared. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to send this rib to the back. So I'm going to go right click, arrange, send to the back. Straight away you can see my panel has come to the front, and that's really what I want. Your shape must always be to the front of your rib. Now what we're going to do is we're going to get the black arrow tool and we're going to select both the rib and the shape. We're going to not bother with this at the moment, we're just concentrating on this part here. And what we're going to do is we're going to clipping mask this shape, and what that means is we're going to mask out everything that does not come in this barrier here, this panel. There's two ways you can do this. You can press Command 7, or you can go to Objects and you can go down to Clipping Mask and you can say select Make. And so as soon as you do that, you can see it's masked out everything that did not come within that framework. So now what I can do is I can drag this upwards and I can put it into my collar, my new panel. And then I can go back, I can get my reflect tool because I just need to use that same clipping mask that I used. I'm going to press my Alt key, click in the center, and again it's reflected itself. Going to select preview, which is already there, and I'm going to do copy. And as soon as I do that, I get my rib in both sections. Now the last bit I need to do is put my rib in here, and what I'm going to do is go again, black arrow tool. I'm going to hold my Alt key this time. This is another way of copying an item. Instead of doing Command C and Command V, you can just hold your Alt key, click and drag, and it duplicates that shape. So again, I'm going to get my pen tool and I'm going to draw a line. I'm going to curve it this time because I need my rib to curve, let's take the fill off, to the shape of my back neck panel. So I'm just going to put a curve through the center. And now I'm going to apply my rib brush to that stroke. So again, black arrow tool, click on your brushes, and again your brush gets applied to that line. Going to right click, arrange, I'm going to send that to the back, again so that this panel is at the front. I'm going to get my black arrow tool and select the rib and the shape. And you can see I've selected the rib because that blue line there. I'm going to do Command 7 to clipping mask, or again as I said, Objects, clipping mask, Make. And there I have my other rib. So I can actually drag that now, get my black arrow tool and drag that shape, and I can put it in the right place. And there we have it. you have added your rib to your panel, and you can do that to anything, a cuff, a hem, a jogging bottom waistband, and it's quite fairly easy. You can change the setting of the stroke at any point by double clicking and actually clicking on that box. See, again, if I change that down to 0.5, I'm making my rib even smaller, and it's really flexible really. There's so much you can do with it, but I'm going to leave you to play with that for yourself, and I'll be back with some more tutorials. Thank you.